You woke up this morning and made a decision. Coffee or tea? You picked coffee. Felt like your choice, right? Fully yours. You're a rational person, making rational calls, running your own life. Here's the uncomfortable question. What if that decision, and almost every decision you've made today, this week, this year, wasn't actually made by the part of you that thinks it's in charge? Think about it. You've snapped at someone you love over something microscopic and had no idea why until hours later. You've self-sabotaged a relationship, a job, an opportunity, and watched yourself do it, almost like a passenger. You've felt an attraction, an aversion, a compulsion you couldn't explain even to yourself. Over 100 years ago, a doctor in Vienna looked at patterns like these and came to a conclusion so unsettling it permanently damaged humanity's ego. Sigmund Freud didn't just study the mind. He dismantled the idea that you're the one steering it. Today, we're introducing you to the actual puppet master behind your decisions. And by the end of this video, the version of you that thinks it's fully in control is going to feel a lot less certain. Freud needed a way to explain something radical, that most of your mind is completely invisible to you. So he used an image that's stuck around for over a century. The iceberg, picture it, a massive block of ice floating in dark water. What you see above the surface, the small visible tip, that's your conscious mind. Your current thoughts, what you're aware of right now, in this exact moment. Listening to this sentence, it's a tiny fraction of the whole structure. Just beneath the surface, still touched by light but harder to see, sits the preconscious. This is where Freud put memories, facts, and feelings that aren't active in your mind right now, but that you can pull up with a little effort. Your childhood address, the name of your third-grade teacher, a song lyric you haven't thought about in years but could sing on command. It's not hidden. It's just below the waterline, waiting, but then there's the rest of the iceberg. The enormous mass submerged in freezing, pitch-black water, invisible from the surface entirely. This is the unconscious. And according to Freud, this is where the real engine of your personality lives. Repressed memories, primal urges, buried trauma, desires you've never consciously acknowledged. Some of them things your conscious mind actively works to keep hidden from itself. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. That massive submerged section, it's not passive storage. Freud argued it's actively influencing your behavior right now, shaping your fears, your attractions, your self-sabotage. While the small conscious tip you identify as you remains almost completely unaware it's happening. You're not looking at the whole iceberg. You never have been. So if the unconscious is running the show behind the scenes, who exactly is fighting for control down there? Freud broke the mind into 3 competing forces, and understanding them is like finally getting the cast list for a war that's been happening inside you your entire life. First, the ID. This is the oldest, most primitive part of your psyche, and it operates entirely in the unconscious. The I doesn't negotiate. It doesn't wait. It wants what it wants. Pleasure, food, sex, comfort, immediate gratification, right now, with zero regard for consequences, morality, or other people. Think of the id as a newborn baby that never grew up, screaming the second it's hungry, with no concept that anyone else's needs exist. On the complete opposite end, the superego. This is your internalized moral compass, built from years of parental rules, religious teaching, and societal expectations absorbed since childhood. The superego is the strict, judgmental voice constantly measuring your behavior against an ideal and making you feel guilt, shame, or anxiety the moment you fall short. If the ID is a hungry infant, the superego is a disapproving parent who never actually leaves the room, and caught directly in the middle, the ego. This is the closest thing to what you'd call you. The ego's job is to mediate, to find a realistic compromise between the ID's raw demands and the superego's harsh moral judgment, while somehow still functioning in the actual world. Here's the catch. This isn't a negotiation that happens once. It's constant. Every single day your ego is fighting a two-front war, holding back primitive urges on one side, defending against crushing guilt on the other, And most of that battle happens completely below your conscious awareness, that craving you randomly gave into, that guilt you couldn't explain. That's not random. That's the ego losing ground in a war you never even knew was happening. Now, here's where this gets genuinely disturbing. Because if the id, ego, and superego are constantly battling beneath your awareness, that raises a question most people spend their entire lives avoiding. If a hidden war is deciding your cravings, your guilt, your attractions, and your self-sabotage, how much of what you call your personality did you actually choose? Stick around because we're about to walk straight into Freud's most famous and most uncomfortable conclusion before we get there. If this kind of deep dive into the architecture of your own mind is exactly what you're here for, hit subscribe right now, because we break down a concept like this every single week. And if that iceberg metaphor just made you rethink your last impulsive decision, drop a like. It genuinely helps more people find this. Let's keep going. Freud summarized his entire discovery in one devastating sentence. The ego is not master in its own house. Sit with that for a second. The part of you that feels like the pilot, the decision maker, the real you. Freud is saying it's not actually running the ship. It's more like a mid-level manager, constantly negotiating between forces it barely understands and definitely doesn't control. This is why Freud considered his own discovery one of history's great blows to human ego, right alongside Copernicus proving Earth isn't the center of the universe, and Darwin proving humans aren't separate from animals. Copernicus took away our cosmic importance. Darwin took away our biological uniqueness. Freud took away something even more personal, the comforting idea that we're rational agents, fully aware of our own motivations, freely choosing our own path. Think about the implications here. That relationship pattern you keep repeating without meaning to, that fear you can't logically justify, that instant, visceral reaction to a stranger you've never met. According to Freud, none of that is random noise. It's the unconscious, shaped by buried experiences you may not even remember, quietly steering outcomes you believe you're choosing freely. The illusion of free will in this framework isn't a lie exactly. It's more like being handed the steering wheel of a car that's already been programmed with a destination, and being told to enjoy the drive. So where does this leave you? Powerless? Not exactly. Freud didn't build this model to make you feel hopeless. He built it because he believed insight itself was a form of power. If the unconscious is quietly running significant parts of your behavior, then the goal isn't to achieve some impossible total control. It's to slowly bring more of that submerged iceberg into the light. This is why therapy, journaling, dream analysis, even honest self-reflection. Freud believed all of it worked the same way. Not by giving you total command of the unconscious, but by shrinking the gap between what's driving you and what you're actually aware of. Think about the last time you understood why you reacted the way you did to something, really understood it, down to the root. That moment of clarity didn't eliminate the unconscious force behind it, but it gave your ego a fighting chance to respond differently next time, instead of being blindsided by the same submerged pattern over and over. You may never fully own your own house, but the more of it you can see, the less it controls you without your permission. Here's what I want you to sit with. The next time you make a snap decision, feel an urge you can't explain, or watch yourself repeat a pattern you swore you'd break, pause for 1 second before writing it off as just who you are. Ask instead what part of the iceberg that decision actually came from. The conscious tip you can see, or the vast submerged mass, quietly pulling the strings the entire time. Freud never promised you'd win that internal war completely. He just handed you the map. If this shifted how you think about your own mind, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we're diving into a new psychological framework like this every single week. And drop a comment telling me, what's one decision you've made recently that you're now questioning whether you actually chose? I want to know. See you in the next one.